Society spends an entire lifetime praising those who solve everything on their own. What a strong person! How independent! What an example! But nobody tells you the cost of that, how much this strength can be destroying you from the inside. A friend of mine, I'll call him Sam, was the guy everyone admired. He never complained, never asked for anything, he solved everything. One day I asked him, "Man, don't you miss having someone to confide in?" He went quiet, and then he said something I never forgot. Confide in whom? Everyone sees me as the strong one. If I ask for help, who am I? Today's video is about the psychology behind that, why some people simply can't ask for help, and what that reveals about who they truly are. Everyone knows someone who, when life gets tough, smiles and says, "I'm fine," who carries everything without making a sound, who prefers to sleep less, work more, fend for themselves, rather than simply raising their hand and saying, "I need help." And the curious thing is that these people aren't fragile. On the contrary, they are often the most competent, the most reliable, the ones everyone calls when something needs to be solved. The irony of it is that precisely because they are so capable of helping others, they never learn to receive. So what's happening inside the mind of someone like that? Why can't an intelligent, conscious person who perfectly understands when a friend needs support ask for the same for themselves? It's not stubbornness. It's not pride in the simple sense of the word. It's something much deeper, much older. And understanding this changes the way you see these people, and perhaps the way you see yourself. The first pillar is what I call the invisible equation of worth. For many of these people, asking for help isn't just a practical act. It's a declaration of identity. From a very young age, whether through family, school, or life experiences, they learned that being capable means being loved, that their usefulness is directly linked to their presence in the world. When you grow up in an environment where praise comes when you solve things, when you deliver, when you don't cause trouble, the message that gets ingrained isn't spoken aloud. It doesn't need to be. It simply settles in. My worth depends on my ability to not need. And this invisible equation operates in silence for years, for decades. The person doesn't even know it exists anymore. They just feel that strange resistance when someone offers help, that distrust, that immediate impulse to refuse. Asking for help for these people doesn't just seem inconvenient, it seems dangerous, as if by showing a need, they were jeopardizing something much more precious than the task itself, how others perceive them. The second pillar is more delicate, and I need you to pay attention here. And of course, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. There's a difference between trusting others and feeling safe depending on others, and these two things aren't the same. There are people who genuinely trust those around them. They believe others are good, that they have honest intentions. But even so, they can't rely on them, because at some point in life, not necessarily a major trauma, sometimes 1,000 small disappointments, they learn that when you need people, they don't always show up. Not because they're bad, simply because that's life. Someone promised and didn't deliver. Someone was there and then wasn't anymore. Someone was called and didn't come. And the mind, which is extraordinarily good at finding patterns, concluded, it's safer not to depend. Not as a conscious thought, as a survival rule. So these people don't ask for help because, deep down, they don't believe it will come. And they prefer not to ask than to ask and be disappointed. Because the disappointment of someone who expected it hurts much more than the burden of someone who never expected anything. This isn't cynicism, it's self-preservation. It's the mind doing what it always does, trying to protect you the way it learned. The third pillar is what impresses me the most, because it's the most paradoxical. There's a form of control that looks like humility, a form of autonomy that looks like strength, but which, in reality, is fear very well disguised. When you do everything yourself, you know exactly what will happen. You control the process. You control the outcome. You're not at anyone's mercy. And for a mind that has learned that the unexpected often hurts, this control is a physical relief. You feel it in your body. The problem is that this control comes at a price. It isolates. It exhausts. It creates an armor so efficient that, over time, even people who genuinely want to help can't get through. And that's when a particular loneliness begins. Not the loneliness of someone who has no one, the loneliness of someone who has people around them, but can't truly be seen by any of them. Because truly being seen requires showing where you are weak. And that, for these people, still seems impossible. When you look at these three pillars together, the equation of worth, learned distrust, and control as protection, you begin to understand that there's nothing wrong with these people. There's something that makes perfect sense. They're not difficult. They're not arrogant. They're just being exactly what life taught them was safe to be. And nobody teaches this on purpose. Nobody sits in front of a child and says, "Learn to never ask for help." It just happens. In silence, in gestures, in patterns repeated for so long that they seem like personality. And I truly believe that understanding this is more transformative than any practical advice. Because when you see the mechanism, when you understand where it came from, it loses a bit of the power it has over you. It doesn't vanish, it doesn't disappear overnight, but you start to look at it with less shame and more curiosity. There's an image that always comes back to me when I think about these people. It's the image of someone holding a very heavy box, and next to them, there's another person extending a hand saying, "Can I help you with that?" And the person with the box smiles, readjusts the weight in their arms and says, "No need, I'm fine." And they believe it. They truly believe they're fine. Because the weight is already so familiar that they no longer feel it as a burden. They feel it as normal. They feel it as part of who they are. And perhaps the most honest question isn't, "Why don't you ask for help?" Perhaps it's, "When was the last time you allowed yourself not to carry everything alone?" There's no right answer to that. Each person has their own time. Each person has their own story. But there's something powerful in simply naming the pattern, in looking at it and saying, "I see you. I know where you came from, and I understand why you're here." Because the strength that brought you here isn't the problem. The problem is when that strength starts to cost you the possibility of truly being human, of being seen, of being carried once in a while by someone you chose to trust. And that's not weakness. That's the bravest part of all.